Ну, я больше буду дольше 5 минут.
Может, такие виды так классные. Я вообще сначала поддержки не, там просто такой прикол, потому что там
Нет, там тоже очень там придумать.
она уменьшается. Потом у тебя система выкидывает сессии и все полное. Как несколько раз.
А что это значит? Но я не понял, типа, это как бы...
Если escape, то все, я сначала тоже не понимал, что прикол, типа escape,
Да, по-моему. Я не выключил. Мэн, я вообще, я на своем не терпец.
Я буду просто, знаешь, попробую на армию, как я раздаю недорогие, вспомнить, что лучше.
Не, он все помнит. В целом можно будет по дереву. Или граф выразить. Можешь пробил?
Там ничего сложного не было, просто интересно, что сделать.
Ты поставил трел?
Это помоги. Да он просто не выложил. Мне пришлось срок новый репозиторий создавать, чтобы на компьютер выходить.
Я еще...
Да, и я, смотри, уже как-то у меня вчера минус... Да, вчера у меня минус 2%. Но зато сегодня у меня уже... Да, 0. Да не, я закинул просто ошибку, у меня типа кореш поднял за 5 дней 8 тысяч евро. И я закинул как бы это, ну, это мемкоин, больше скажу. Это типа пародия на мемкоин, но я закинул типа чуть-чуть, просто то, что, условно говоря, если он не сгорит, и там, например, через какое-то время хотя бы 10%, это сгорит.
Ну да, этим занимаются, они не котируют.
Так, чел, это Cascade. А основную часть буду в стейблкоине.
Нет, стейблкоины они тоже котируют.
Что не факт?
Определенные детали, я не знаю.
Не, есть
хрень, они не сидят. Поэтому не хочу там лезть, потому что если ты не сидишь просто постоянно, особого...
Смотри, тут дело не в том, дело в том, что ты можешь не просто, например, да, типа, ну, замочку. Там, то есть, они интеграция точно, да, и ты можешь, например, откладывать, ну, не в какую-то хуету, типа, понятно, если будешь вкладывать какие-то мемкоины и так далее, скорее всего, ты их потеряешь. А просто до того же самого стейблкоина нестабильно. Эфир, я думаю, стабильно, если за них технологию обеспечивать. Биткоин тоже. Он спокойно стабильно, 90% нормально. Я думаю, он
Вроде уже больше.
Ну, может быть, даже уже больше.
Я просто как бы написал,
Он должен быть проценты, просто типа число на что.
Нет, там, по-моему, он...
Нет, я смотрю, доступно очень жесткая схема, короче. Есть схема блокчейна. В каждом этом блоке, сколько операций, десятка сотен операций описано. И вот каждый программист говорит, они ищут рандомное число, которое типа записи, плюс вот это какое-то рандомное, даже число, по-моему, типа строка, выдаст при кодировке SHA-256, там сколько лучшего рейта в начале. То есть они ищут просто рандомный фигур, который при кодировке выдаст определенный тип. И чем больше цель завешен, тем ей доверяют.
Нет, я тоже прям хоть зарабатываю, прям конкретно.
И вот эти те, кто
siin hakkab siis neid square state'id, et on näha ka, et see peab olema word square state'id. Siis ta nagu loob uue state'i ja lisab selle nagu siia list state'i. Nii, siis siin on lihtsalt ainult see listida. Siis see teeb täpselt sama ette. Nii, ja siin ta hakkab siis neid mõlemaid listida läbi käima kahe erineva pordi omastusega. Eelpoolt nullina salvestama neid square state'id nendele kohtadele ja siis nendele kohtadele sellele teisele pordile. Ja nagu tundub okei, aga võib-olla ta läheb homme tööle.
Su kood on hea
ja kusjuures mul on see, kui ma nagu panen näiteks pildid, siis ma rebuildin seda, pean seda nagu what?
Да, вопрос был любой.
Возможно, были бы вопросы.
Короче, если ты хочешь прям типа зарабатывать, да, должен сидеть типа днями решать. А если ты хочешь какую-то сейчас просто хранить, инвестировать, то можешь быть пример. И в целом, скорее всего, какой-то небольшой компьютер. Ведь сам что ты будешь делать?
Ну, потом еще выводить.
Не, ну есть, конечно, что-нибудь для компании. Это, конечно, представить большую сумму. Хотя у меня, короче, РДК, короче, звонит, спрашивает, что это тут делается Константин. У нас фамилия одинаковая, я спросили. По своей какой-то, то есть я вместе с этим много, там тоже Нет, даже если ты работаешь, даже если ты работаешь, что да, типа они с тем
Я скажу, что 2005, считал на
да видишь, насколько реально как это было правильно, потому что мы говорили с ним из засолки. Спрашивают, да, что это за Константин? А то, что понятно, что с фамилией, блядь, ребенок. Что за спросить такое? Типа, понимаешь, что я заигрывал?
Окей.
Так что, уже. По-серому выводить.
Когда ты там делаешь интерфейс, да, он в тебя будет список стандартных комбинаций, или ты всегда ее
Я даже ничего не понимаю, что прикол.
Это прикольно. Вообще, я после того, как ты дропнул за 2 страны, это ты запомнил дело.
Да?
Nii, hakkame ära. All right, let's start. Hopefully. So last time we were here, yes? So we went through the database, I think. Was it like so? Yes. And we designed the database. So we did some kind of UIs. So student information system. We actually accessed the full-blown SQL database. So we did with all the migration, stuff like that. We verified our database structure. We did write all those DB sets. We did write some simple console application to actually do something with it. Okay. And then we did skipped a little bit ahead and added the system that Cascade delete was removed from our context, because we had this circular reference problem that we got kind of like the loop inside our entities. And then the SQL is unhappy that it doesn't know how to actually delete the stuff automatically. All right, so we are done with the intro. So let's look into a little bit more what we can actually do with the entity framework, and then let's try to do something useful. So one thing we can try to do is to try to add a logging. to the system, so we can actually see what is happening. Although maybe we can do it when we do some kind of web application already, but in theory it's quite an easy thing to do. That you can write out to the console and you can see, or let the entity framework write out to the console that what is going on. So what those SQL sentences are that are generated and how the database is accessed. So this is here. We did the migrations. And now let's speak a little bit what is going on with in more depth how to actually use this system. So initially we only just, last time, we just accessed one entity, and this is it. We just deal with whatever was the name of it, entity, I think, or was it person or something? Student, person, I think. Yeah. But what if we want more? So the first thing is that all of you are on the database course also, probably, or should be at least, the developers. So everybody, or let's say not everybody, have you covered what is a join in your database course? Everybody knows what a join is. Yes? No? No? Don't really remember. Okay. So let's discuss a little bit. First the theory, and then at least some kind of theory, what we are trying to do. So the main concept, kind of like simplistically, is this that whatever we had last time, we had what a person, and person has courses, yes? That we have courses, persons, and then you can enter the person into the course, yeah? We had that kind of system. I think it goes like this. A course, a person, and then we had, what is it? Something like enrollment, something like declaration, yeah, declaration, exactly. And we have here every person can have many declarations. Every declaration has one person, and the same from this side. Every course has many declarations. Declaration has only one course. So we have this. So now the question is, it's easy to understand when we work with one entity at a time. So give me the list of persons, or give me the list of courses, or whatever. But now when I want to get this, give me the list of declarations. That's understandable. But basically this declaration only has two main fields, which are this course ID and person ID. But what I want to do in my code is actually this, that I want to get this declaration.person dot some kind of first name. So I actually want to construct a query that give me this, and also give me the information about the persons attached to this record or records, depending how many I will get those out from here, and also give me the courses at the same time. So I want to get the full data set. So from the SQL point of view, this is called a join, so how the query is finally constructed. There are different ways how to do it, but what do you need to learn in your SQL kind of course, not here, is this, that you have, this is kind of like painting one. Let's try this. You have this, and you have this. So this is, let's say, this is the B, and this is the A. And basically what you need to learn in your SQL sentences first is all the different combinations of this Venn diagram. So this is our, let's say, a person, and this is, let's say, declaration. So you need to figure out the queries how to get all the possible combinations. So give me only this part here, so the common data. So this is the most common query of them all. So then give me only the persons and give me only the declarations. This is also kind of like simple. So 3 cases are kind of like easy to understand. But then you get into the more complex queries here. Give me all the persons that don't have declarations here. Give me all the declarations that don't have the persons, etc. So there's like different ways how to color those. So it's basically 3 bits. Yeah. Okay, let's say 0, 0, 0 is pointless, so don't give me anything. So that one goes out. But then all the different combinations, basically, give me all the persons and all the declarations which do not have anything common. So different ways how to construct this join. But most common one, most used one is this one here in the middle. So give me all the persons that have the declarations with those declarations. So for that, or for those kind of like queries, and how to construct those. And we have different ways how to do it. And first problem, what we need to kind of solve is it the eager, explicit, or lazy data loading? So when we load those declarations with the persons, which way we want to get the data? Do we want to get all the data at once? Do we want first load the declarations only without the persons and without the subjects? And then later load the persons and load the subjects. So this is called explicit loading. Eager will bring everything at once. And then we have the lazy. So typically ORMs, object relational mappers, also support lazy data loading, which basically means that when you try to access something from your object, let's say declaration.person, then although you can see from the queries that the person is not there initially, but magically it will appear. So when you type person or declaration.person.firstname and try to print it out to the console or to the web, it will just be there kind of like automatically. So there is no automagic, there's just automation. C# or .NET will see that, hey, you try to access some kind of property, and it will execute an additional query against the database that, hey, now I want to load this specific person with the data. So the lazy is strongly not recommended, although it is possible if you want to do it. And 2 better ways are the eager and the explicit. And most commonly, we tend to use the eager data loading. So when we execute the query, we already know that we want to get all the data anyhow. So let's load it all at once. So for this eager, we have this include. So this is the basic join, how Entity Framework specifies it. So starting from the table, whatever the table is currently. So let's say declarations. So from the declarations, let's include declaration.persons. So we point out the list. So that's why we have those navigation properties there. So we point out not just only that, but this is the way we also use those. So if you write to the query that .include and then point out what kind of navigation collection to include, then this will be loaded. And we can do the include several times. So for example, in case of these declarations, we want to get both the subject and the person. So we do 2 times this .include. And we can also include going down the list. So we can include more levels. So we can also include from A to the B to the C to the D to the whatever. So unlimited depth. So as many joins on top of each other as you want to. And the only difference here is this, that when you write just .include, this will always go back to the beginning. So if this is the declaration, so this is the A, so this will be include, then include, then include. And now when you write again dot include, then this will be from here, a.x.y.z. So include always starts from the top. So sometimes you need to write quite a few dot include and then go into the depths, blah, 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 blah down there, and then start again for include, and then depending how complex is your database structure. So then we have the primary key. That one we already covered. So there is 2 ways how to use it. Either it's stick to the conventions, is the most recommended way. So then it's the class name plus ID or just ID, depending which one is simpler for you. Later on, typically we just use IDs, because then we can write all kinds of like automations on top of that. And you can also use annotations. So you can write this key on top of the property in class, and automatically Entity Framework will pick it up. And you can also do it in the Fluent API. So then it is this .has key in the model builder, and then you point out the property that will be the primary key. And if you want to do a composite key, then this composite key is only possible in the Fluent API. So then it is this has key syntax, and then you make a new anonymous object in place and point out the properties via the anonymous object. So typically, let's say, composite key might be something like, I don't know, let's say, first name plus last name has to be unique combination. And then we have the regarded optional system. Nowadays, this is easier to achieve via the nullables, so via the nullable reference types. So basically, the nullable reference types does this. Let's see, let's open up the writer. I think we didn't enable the nullables here. Yep. But we can. Let's say course declaration. Yep. So here it is. So this is how you should read it in context of nullables. So we have this relationship here that I think it is not with nullables. I think we did enable them. Yes. So you know that this navigation property, this is just a kind of abstraction. There is no person in this table in course declaration. This actually points to the different database table. But the important part is the foreign key here. So if the foreign key is integer, or whatever the type is for the foreign key, but let's stick to the integers in the beginning, then this is a value type. This means that this always has to have a value, and the referential integrity is enforced by the database. So the value, whatever we are saving into the person ID column, actually has to exist in the person table as a primary key. If you do this, now it's an optional. This means that now this field is actually nullable in the database. And then this means that this navigation property is also optional. So now you can create a course declaration without the person. You can leave it as a null. Which means that if it initially was this, now it will be this. So you allow nulls. You can have a course without the person. Then we have next most common one probably is the maximum length attribute, or in the Fluent API. Well, typically we write this one as an attribute. So initially when we created our database here, this one, if you look at the structure of the database, what we get from the SQL, then all the strings are unlimited length. They're just max, nvarchar max type in the SQL database, which is kind of like security hole in some sense, because you can write 4 gigabytes of text or something like that into every string property and then just fill up the disk. But the problem is, where it is coming from is that this, let's take some strings here, the person, that in C#, this string here has no limit. So it's basically whatever is the current memory architecture, and you can fulfill as much as you want to. But, and this is not possible in C#. You cannot limit the string lengths in the C#. I mean, you can via the getter and setter and write some kind of logic there, but in itself, C# cannot be limited. This means that, but we actually kind of like can do it in the code, but there is no out-of-the-box way for it, but database actually has it out of the box. So for that, to actually get any kind of like normal, useful database out of it, we typically do this. And some kind of like decent amount of characters. Everything is Unicode, so the actual byte length might be longer, because in Unicode we have what, 4 bytes maximum in one character. So this is kind of like good habit that always when you create a string, you actually always limit the length in the database. So don't allow those to grow God knows where. Plus, in the syntax or how the database actually creates the tables, then it's, how can I explain it easily? How can we keep in the database unlimited length of strings in table? We have no ideas how long the actual text will be. So if you don't know how long the string will be on the first name and last name, then we cannot keep it with the rest of the data. Because the rest of the data is kind of fixed, we can count the bytes. But we cannot count the bytes on the first name and last name. So this means that what the SQL will do, it will create an additional file for every string field and keep those there. Plus, when you start to delete data and update data, what will happen then? Because you have some kind of like fixed amount of bytes in the text file, you add additional bytes into or additional characters into the first name. Now this name will not fit anymore there. So this piece of file is now called like obsolete, and it's copied to the back. So basically this text file will just grow and grow and grow and grow and grow forever. So it's, okay, there are some kind of optimizations going on, but this is kind of like really, really not optimized like well, or cannot be optimized really, really well. If you do this, max length something, then now database engine knows that the maximum length for this string is this. It's not too long, we can keep it with the rest of the data, we will only get one database file out of it, and it will work much, much, much faster. So don't forget to add those max length attributes actually. Once again, when you typical developer problem is that initially you work with your like 6 records in the database and everything works really, really fast. No problem with max lengths, no problem with indexes, no text search problems, not anything. And then you go into the production and then you get like 2 million records in the database and then nothing works anymore. And then you start to discover, okay, okay, this is shouldn't be done like this. Where are my indexes? How do I write my queries? What is my query plan? How are those indexes actually used? Are those the correct indexes, etc., etc. So we have those kinds of problems typically that everything works in my computer with 6 records in the database. And actually, I want to reload it here. Where did it go? Oh. Maximum length indexes. Okay. And then we got to the indexes. Somebody pointed out to me that actually the Entity Framework 5 now supports also attribute-based indexes. So yes, we can now write those on top of entity class. So we have two ways how to create indexes. Either it's with the Fluent API, that used to be standard, or we can write on top of entity class this index attribute, then point out that please include this this field in the index, so out of those whatever the title is, and should the index be unique. Is unique true. And if you want to, we can add many of those name of first name, name of last name, so over the several fields. So index can be a combination of several fields. So this is, for example, typically how we enforce that the first name and last name has to be unique combination. Although we already have the primary key, you can also make a primary key out of first name and last name, but this is kind of like maybe not the best way how to approach it. Composite primary keys are really hard to use in code actually. But if you want to guarantee, for example, that let's say email is unique, then it's just here, name of email, some kind of. And if you want to get just unique student, or let's say person in our case, we can enforce this that the first name and the last name combination of those has to be unique index. So then it's guaranteed by the database that you cannot insert same person again. Or we can do it via the Fluent API. Then we can have default values in different ways. Either we will can use some kind of fixed constant, or we can have also this has default value SQL, and then you can write some kind of SQL function here that will be executed every time when the new data is inserted into the database. Although this is kind of like not the recommended thing to do, because this is now SQL this specific SQL server specific. So it might not work in different SQL server. If you switch database engines, then those has default value SQL, those might fail suddenly. Because, for example, Microsoft SQL and MariaDB or MySQL are actually quite different in that sense, what functions are working there. Then we can also exclude stuff from the database. If something is calculated or based on the calculations, then typically you don't want to save it into the database. Let's say person.fullname. So if the full name is just a combination of first name and last name, then the full name should not be there in the database, even if the full name has actually setter also, if it's not just a getter only. If it's getter only, then it's automatically not added to the database. But if there is a getter and setter, and you actually do not want to have it in the database, there is no value in it, then you can use this NotMapped annotation on top of the property, and then the entity framework will ignore it, and there's nothing on the SQL about it. Or you can do it in the Fluent API in the same way. And then we have maybe the most kind of the complex thing, depending what you want to do. Those are the relationships. So we have already did some. So the classical one-to-many and many-to-many. The many-to-many is actually not there. So in case of many-to-many, it's you have always this one table in between. Although in your head, we kind of have this many-to-many, but actually it's not possible technically. So it's one-to-many and one-to-one, what are possible. And now we have different ways how to configure those navigation properties. So how the relationships actually work. And initially, everything works out of the box just nice. We don't need to do anything extra. Just based on how our entities look like, what is specified there, everything will work. It will not work always. And one place where it will fail is when we start to use the same navigation twice. So for example, if we do something like this, let's say we have the person table, and let's say we have photo. And let's say we have here something fields like this. Photo, let's say, I don't know, front, and photo with cat ID also. So let's say we have something like this. So we want to have that every person might have two pictures, and maybe it's even something like let's say might have nothing. If it is just one relationship between person and the photo, then this works out of the box, no questions. You don't have to do anything. As soon as you have multiple relationships between two tables, then this will fail, and the entity framework will start to complain that I don't know what to do. Please help me out how to configure it. And for that, we have those kind of annotations for eigen key and the inverse property that will help us out here, how to configure those. So the first one, for eigen key, on its own, the for eigen key describes the same way as the key property. If the for eigen key is not discovered automatically, what field is actually the for eigen key? So for example, here we have this blog, and there is no blog ID, so there is no for eigen key. If you don't do anything, then automatically entity framework will add, if you look at the table later on, will add this blog ID field or column into the database. But if you actually want to use some kind of weird field for that one, this blog for eigen key, for example, so it's not named by the conventions, then you have to use this for eigen key attribute on top of the blog. Why doesn't it work like I want to? So this here, that hey, for this navigation property here, please use this blog for eigen key, so this property here, please use this one as a for eigen key. And then entity framework will not introduce an extra field into your table, and will use this one. You can also use the for eigen key actually on top of this one here. And you can point out that, hey, for eigen key, and then point out the blog, that this key is for the blog, so it works both ways. And then we have this inverse property. So inverse property points out, in case of here, in this person system, for example, that which property matches with what list in the other end. Or it can also be one-to-one property, or one-to-one or zero-to-one actually relationship. So here it points out that this iterate posts list here actually should go here into the post table, and from the post table collect all the authors, so from this field here, and based of course in the table from the author user ID. But this is immediately visible as soon as you get an exception from the entity framework when you do the migrations, that hey, I cannot figure out what the relationship is here because you have you have more than one navigation property between two entities. Then it's immediately clear what you need to do, and then this inverse property is the thing that will help you out. That what way this list has to be collected from what, and this list has to be collected from what. Because what the entity framework can see here is this iterate posts. It is a list of posts. So, and there is another list of posts. So what's the difference between those two lists? How can I figure out, or how can the entity framework figure out how should this list be collected and how should this list be collected? And this is where the exception is coming from, and then we need this inverse property that, hey, okay, this list, please go and collect from the authors, and this list please go and collect from the contributors. Once again, typically not needed. Mostly your databases will be like simple ones initially at least, and you don't need to deal with those. But as soon as you start to do anything more complex, then it's definitely needed. So then we work with those foreign keys and with those inverse properties. And we can do the same thing with the Fluent API if you want to. So then it has this has on and with many. So you start from the entity post. You describe from the entity post what it has on blog. So post is connected to the blog. And then you describe, now we are inside the blog, and now we describe back from the blog what the thing is that points back to the, from the blog to the post, and from the blog to the post we have this posts. So this describes from both ends, like from person to the photo, and then from the photo we get the list to the persons. And then we have this cascade delete. So that one we already jumped ahead the last lecture and automatically, or not automatically, but already used it because our database had this famous object relational problem that we got this kind of structure in our database. It's actually okay in the database to do something like this, and then SQL Server is unhappy that he doesn't know how to delete stuff now. So if you start to delete something, and default behavior is cascade delete. So if you delete, so the relationship goes that this one has to have one this, so it goes this way. Yeah? So if you start to delete this one, this means that you also need to delete this record. And if you delete this record, you also need to delete this record. And Entity Framework kind of tries to, SQL Server actually, not Entity Framework. SQL Server tries to see that, okay, if you delete this one, I need to delete this one also. If I delete this one, then I need to delete this one. So always the deletion starts from here. So this one goes first, then this, then I can delete this one. And now it's unhappy, what will happen with this one here? And then it tells you that, hey, sorry, now we have like cyclic path inside entities here. I don't know how to delete it anymore. So then we need to configure it manually how actually the cascade delete should happen in this case. So typically, and plus cascade delete is kind of like problematic thing because you can basically like delete one simple entity, you think, and actually like most of your database will be deleted like out of the box. So it's kind of like maybe not the best default behavior. So typically my behavior is that, or in my applications, that I will turn the cascade delete off with this kind of code, and then either I will configure it back via the Fluent API, like really carefully and thinking, okay, if I delete this, is it okay that automatically I will also delete all the childs? And then when somebody wants to delete it, delete something in the database, then I will do it in the code that I know, okay, first I need to go and delete the bottom one here, then this one, and then I can actually delete the topmost record. And I do it in my code, so I don't let the database take care of it like automatically. So this is the kind of, let's say, really simple introduction to Entity Framework. So this is just scratching the surface. But here is the most things, let's say most used and most common kind of things we need to write any kind of decent application using the database. And now we start to combine it with this Razor Pages. First, a little bit theory, which somehow I need to repeat with you again on the next lecture, or not even more on the next semester again. And then suddenly it seems that even when the examination comes, I still need to repeat with some of you. So please try to understand what I'm trying to convey here and why it is. It's kind of like not really important immediately, but it is really important to really understand what the hell are you doing and how this thing actually works. So what the hell is HTTP and how it works? Especially how it works in more complex cases than just simple GET request. And what the hell is even the web server and what the hell is web browser? Because most of your let's say, professional life, if you actually will be developers, is spent dealing with this thing. We don't write any more console application. We almost, let's say 50%, we don't anymore write even mobile applications. Everything is freaking JavaScript and web. So it's everywhere. So it's actually really important that you understand well what is going on here. And actually, did you already have the web course?
Yes.
So HTML and forms and all kinds of that stuff. So somehow I'm really amazed that I have to do this every year because you should actually know it already. Hopefully it's better this year. Did you do it with Märt Kalma?
Yeah.
Yes? And I have spoken with Märt several times about it, and Märt says, yes, I have spoken to you about it, and somehow you don't know anything. So it's kind of like, what the hell? I specifically went back to the Märt that I have seen the problem several years in the row, and I went back to the Märt, hey, are you teaching this? I have problem. Students are coming out from your course and they don't know shit. And somehow Märt is totally convinced that he has spoken to you about it, and somehow it's actually, you don't have it for whatever reason. So then it's, let's say, it's just a reminder, let's say, how it works. So let's start. Nothing to do with the C# initially. We just speak about how the web works. So what we are doing here, and not specifically web in that sense that there might be no web browser, it just might be a program speaking to another program. So when you execute the GET request, then what the GET request actually is, and what is the HTTP protocol, and what gets sent to the server. So what basically is sent, what is actually sent is, everything is just a text. There is no data. There is no JSON. There is no, I don't know, some kind of objects or whatever else. It's just a text. Whatever you are sending, forms, uploading files, whatever you are doing, everything is just text, nothing else. It's all text-based. So in simple cases, let's start from the simplest requests we do here. We start with the GET. So basically, you open up the browser, you write some kind of URL in the address bar, you press enter. What will happen? And we don't go into the depths how the TCP IP works and how the server is found. Let's say that this is covered. Hopefully somebody will find the correct server, will find out the correct port, some kind of, and open up the connection to the web server. And now the interesting part starts. When you press the enter in your web browser in the address bar and you try to access the web server, this kind of text document is produced. So this is a text document. This text document is sent to the server. So some kind of IP address, port 80, or in this case here we can see that some kind of port 44363. If it's public web, then it's 80. If it's HTTPS, then it's 443 port. So some kind of server opens up connection and receives this text file. Everything now in the server who received your request has to come out from this text file. The most important part here is the first line here. The first line tells to the server what kind of request it is. So the first word here describes to the server that what I want to do. Do I want to do the get, the post, delete, put, whatever else? So initially we only deal with two verbs, get and post. So most common verbs. Next semester we will do all the other ones also. Then we have the second part. We describe to the web server what kind of address we actually want to open up. So what was the URL in the browser? So the server needs to parse this out and figure out what the hell is it. What kind of website it is, what port it was, what I actually need to do, and if I know what kind of website it is inside the server, where shall I go? What kind of URL is actually there? Is it some kind of file, some kind of path? Is it some kind of code behind it? Up to the server. And then what protocol is used? HTTP 1.1. And then we have a bunch of other kind of text data. So basically, everything here is key value text pairs. So whatever you're doing inside your browser, forms, posts, whatever you're doing, everything is converted by the browser to this kind of text file. Everything is text. There are no numbers here, just text. And then the server has to browse or receive this text and then dig out from the text file, from those key value pairs, what the hell I need to do. When the server has figured out what to do, is it direct file access? Is it some kind of HTML? Is it some kind of code I need to execute? We get the response. Response that is sent out to the server or to the web client, let's say in your case a browser, is once again just a text file. It starts with a bunch of key value pairs, then there's an empty line, and then we get the actual HTML. So now browser has to read this thing and figure out what to do with it. And once again, most important is this first text line here. What's the protocol and what's the status? 200, okay. And then we have like a bunch of other parameters here, key value pairs, that describe to the browser what to do. No cache, no store, so don't use some kind of like existing copy. What's the content type? So what will this part be here? What's the encoding? What was the server name, date time, how many bytes will be here, etc., etc. So all kinds of like additional helpful info. But once again, everything is text. So this means that if you want to return a web page or construct some kind of, I don't know, your nice game board, it has to end up with this in the web. You have to produce some kind of text document out of it and send it back. Hopefully there is some kind of tooling that will make it easier for us, that you don't have to manually kind of like glue strings together. But basically you can if you want to. You can do it really, really low level, and you can construct this thing like manually and glue just strings together and send those out. And then we have a little bit more complex thing, which is a post. So this is the request. So this is what the browser will send out to the server when you click submit button on the web page. Once again, beginning is the same. So now it's not the get, it's post, the address, the protocol, bunch of like key value pairs. And now the get request doesn't have any kind of payload. Get request is always just an address. In the case of post, we can now have this, one empty line here, and then the actual payload. So when you send the post, you will get something like this. And this seems to be a web form that was sent. And you can see that the data, whatever you entered into the form, is this name equals address. So there was probably a field name or input field called name. It has the value address, and then some kind of request verification token field with God knows what string there. Plus, one more important part, not immediately, you can see that the cookies are also sent here. So the server that has no idea what are the cookies in your application, in your browser, so all this info needs to be sent every time back to the server. So, and maybe like kind of a most important conclusion from here, from this post example is this, that server has no kind of extra ideas. What the hell are you doing in your web browser? So if you click submit, or if you want to communicate, you need to send everything all the time back to the server. So if you don't have the field on the form, if the field is outside of the form or you have any kinds of problems, then wrong text file is constructed and you get like weird errors. So you always have to, if there are problems, you have to go back to this kind of like low level and see what the hell was actually sent to me, what is there. So if you mismatch your names, if you do anything wrong, then C# cannot help you, or let's say Razor cannot help you. And typically we get this as a post response. So this tells to the server that, or to the browser, that hey, I as a server, I got your post, everything is okay, but I will not tell you anything. I will just tell you this 302 pound. 300 is redirect. So all the 300 responses are redirect. So this tells to the browser that hey, everything went okay. There was no error, but now go somewhere else. And the place where to go is this location people. So if the web browser sees this kind of response, it will automatically do a new request and tries to load this back. And goes to the next web page and tries to load the people. And those response codes, we have those. So there are 5 possible codes, or let's say prefixes. So 100, 200, 3, 4, and 500. So 100 is typically not used. If the code starts with a 2, if it's 200 to 299, then it's some kind of success. If it's 300, then it's success, but please execute new request immediately, go away. If it's 400, then this means that the browser has made some kind of mistake, or let's say the client has made a mistake, wrong password, page not found, etc. All those are 400 series. And 500 series response codes means that the server has made a mistake. So server has crashed or something went wrong or whatever happened there in the server, then if server thinks that he is guilty, then it sends back some kind of 500 response. So we have only kind of like 5 things. Most careful here, or most troublesome, let's say, is this. Don't use that one. Or really think carefully if you use it. Because 301 moved permanently tells to the browser that this thing is not here. Go look in the other place. And since it's permanently, you cannot take it back. Once you return this 301 moved permanently, then the browser will cache it basically forever, or till the user tells the browser that, hey, empty the cache. So even if you fix the problem on the server side and now everything is fine, the client will not come back to the same URL anymore. So this has bitten me pretty hard in my life. I have screwed up the client web server pretty badly with that one. So like I made some web changes. I need to take the web down, like temporarily, and I return from the index page, from the home page. I return this 301, move permanently, go to the kind of like construction page, and okay, I fixed the web, put everything back, remove this, move permanently. For me, everything worked, and clients started to yell that hey, nothing works. It always goes to the under the construction web page. Why? And this was forever saved in their browser that hey, go there. So it's kind of like really careful you need to be with this moved permanently. So this is the crash course, how the HTTP protocol works. And you really need it. You need to understand, and even more, what you mostly need to understand is this, how your web forms, when you do some kind of input in your website, and you finally click some kind of submit, then what will happen? And whatever you are doing, your web server can only work with the data that you're sending to it. So if you're not sending the data, then it's not there, and then it's impossible to do anything. So let's start from somewhere. And in C# or in the, let's say, .NET, we have two different ways how to do web applications. We have ASP.NET Core, MVC. So this is the kind of like the full and complex thing with in the pattern of model view controllers. This one we will do next semester. And this semester we will deal with the Razor pages. So it's actually not anymore new. I can remove the new from there. So this is kind of the simpler way how to do web in .NET. And since next semester we also need those both the Razor pages and the MVC in parallel, so we start with the Razor pages here, and then we deal with MVC in the next semester. So it's Razor pages what we deal with. And initially it starts out quite simple. It is actually simple. We have two files in our system. Somewhere we start to speak about where's the web server and stuff like that, but from the viewpoint of what we need to do, we need to generate two files, pagename.cshtml and pagename.cshtml.cs. So basically what it means is that we have one HTML file, and for the HTML, let's say, page, and for this HTML page, we also have C# part. So where all the code for this page is kept. So whatever we are doing, how the data is loaded, how the page is generated, what kind of properties are there, do we need some kind of data binding, if somebody clicks the submit button on the form, what will happen, everything will be there in this C# file. And this page name CS.html, you can see that it's not an HTML, it's a C# HTML. So what Microsoft has done, or what Microsoft has, is a language called Razor. So you had in your web course a PHP, I think. So it's similar to the PHP. So the way how to write code into the HTML. So if you need to kind of like repeat some table row or do something, write out some kind of string, there's this special syntax or special language called Razor that we use inside the HTML. Mostly it's just a C# with little bit additions to make it possible to write C# into the HTML. And out of the box, when we do those C# HTML files, out of the box, or initially, the starting language is HTML. So those are just HTML files, and then we add some Razor stuff there. But the default language is the HTML. And here is the kind of the simplest example what we have. So there is no code here. There isn't anything happening here. So this is the C# HTML, so the Razor page part. And the Razor syntax starts with this @ sign. Since there is no @ sign in the HTML, HTML only starts with the less than sign. So there is no @ sign. So the @ sign here indicates that now starts the Razor. And one major difference with the PHP is that there is no closing tag here. So you start with @ sign and you don't have to finish it with anything in most cases. Sometimes we do need to help it out if there is some problems, but mostly 99% we don't need to do or point out that, hey, here the kind of the Razor part ends. System understands it automatically. And the next line already is pure HTML. So just hello world, H1, so it's the header, size 1, so the biggest header. And we have this code file, so the same page, but what is the code behind? And in the code behind here, it's actually not needed because the HTML is so simple, we don't do anything in the code. But in theory, the simplest code file would look like this. On get and on post, and the methods are empty, so we don't do anything here. So it's just empty code file behind the scenes, but we have the two different methods. So if this page is loaded via the get, then this method is executed, and if the page is loaded via the post, then this method is executed. And first, of course, since the simple model is class, the class is initialized, object is created, so we get the instance of simple model. So we can add a constructor here, for example, if we want to, and then either onGet or onPost is executed, depending what kind of verb was there inside the text file that was sent to the web browser, from the web browser to the web server. And this is the result. So simple empty web page with only this part of HTML, hello world. So this is the kind of the initial thing. And then we have this Razor explanation here. So that one we already explained, most of it. So there is no end tag, so we don't have this kind of like beginning and end, only the start tag. And the only mandatory thing you have is this, the first line in your C# HTML, in case of Razor pages, has to start with this @page. So this will tell to the Razor engine that this is now Razor page, not the MVC view. And most common what we do is this. If you reference some method or reference some variable, then either the method is executed or the variable value is taken. So finally we get some kind of value, and .toString is applied to it. So it's the return value is converted to the string, and result is included into the HTML. So it's analog to the what you have in PHP is two ways. Like this, yeah, is the shorthand syntax. Or then you can do echo this. Same thing. So here this means exactly the same thing, that hey, take some C# method, call it, get the value, convert it to string, and echo it out to the HTML. And if it is already value, then just do string and there it goes. And then we actually want to do something with this code behind. So we need to implement some kind of logic. And kind of the simplest logic we can do initially looks like this. So we reference, now we have here additional stuff. So the second most important line probably is this @model. So this tells to the Razor that what will be the data file basically for this view, for this Razor page. So where shall I go and take the data? The data should come from here, Razor test pages simple model. So this simple model here. So this is the code behind file. And now when Razor knows that, hey, I actually can use this one, simple model. And now when you write @model with the capital M, so we have @model with the small m and with the capital M. So the @model now references the model instance. So you actually have the instance of the model somewhere in the memory. So the Razor can now pick up the type from here. So it has to be this class, Razor test.pages.simple model. And during the runtime, go to the instance of model and grab the message. And this is strongly typed. This is the really, really nice part of it. So when you write this @model dot, then you already get the IntelliSense. IntelliSense will point out to you that, hey, you actually have those and those properties. And if you write anything wrong here, then it will immediately be read, plus it will not compile. So you will not discover your errors during the runtime. You will get those immediately. And then what is here in the code? So here we have this property, string message. And now in the onGet, so the onGet method is always executed when the page is loaded via the get request. So the get request now executes this one. Message equals, and then adds here server time is and date time now. So grabs the datetime, converts it to the string, and adds it to the top of this hello from code string. And the output will be this. When you reload the page, the timestamp will always be the refresh one, the new one. So you can see where the page was, when the page was loaded. So let's try it out. Otherwise, too much theory and too little code.
Can I add JavaScript to this?
Absolutely, as much as you want to. But we will deal with the JavaScript a lot next semester. I mean, we have the subject on the JavaScript in depth with the frameworks.
It's that I'm cybersecurity. So.
Okay, still you can come, but you have to kind of understand this once again, that JavaScript is running only on the browser side, and whatever is the communication you're doing with the server, back to the server, just those post and get requests get sent. So you can do the post and get requests from the JavaScript, from inside the JavaScript, and do all kinds of tricks with those. But JavaScript will not automatically do anything weird with the server, or there is no behind the scenes communication. So let's go here. And I think the DB demo is a nice place where to start from. So we have the console application here, and we can now add the web application on top of here. Add new project. And now we are here, this ASP.NET Core Web Application. And we have different types that we can create. And the main two ones are this, Web App and Web App with Model View Controller. So choose this one, Web App. And for me, typically the name is Web App. And you can also choose this, what kind of authentication do you want to do. So initially, let's choose no authentication. So there is no database and no kind of extra complexity. And the web app is the one with the razor pages. And the name, that's a good question here. So you can name your project whatever you like to. And if you want to do those several web applications inside one solution, then you have to use kind of whatever, 001 and whatever you want to do, or web app test. What I'm doing, or why I'm using this name, or could use also the web application if I want to, the longer one, is that it's make easier to copy my code from one solution to the next. Then I don't have the problems with namespaces. I can do the kind of easy code reuse, just copy paste, and it's always web app in all my solutions. So what I'm doing is described by the solution name. So it's the DB demo. So the web application deals with this, DB demo. And initially choose the no authentication, so we get kind of the simplest thing. And let's create it. Now I need to switch what I'm running. So I want to run this web application. And I have compilation errors. Let's see, pages, error says HTML. What are you complaining about? Non-nullable property request ID is uninitialized. Yes, this is actually a nullable ID. So add one question mark. So here on the line 16 for me. Then switch the type or the project you want to run to the web app and click play. It opens up the browser, and I got the web page. Everybody is in the same place? Yes? Runs? Any issues anywhere? Everything's okay? Super. If you have problems, then yell immediately. You might have. There have been. All right. So we have here this index. So if you look into the folders we have properties, pages, and www root. So let's look into the pages. And let's not dig around here. Let's just add a new one here. And add and page. Let's call it the test. And slide to test it. So two important parts are this page and at model. And for us, what was created, test CSHTML and test CSHTML CS. So let's look what is here. And here we only have this empty on get and nothing else. So our code behind isn't doing anything useful. So let's kind of try to do the simplest thing here. Let's start with this headline, H1. Everybody knows how to write HTML, yes? You have done your HTML course just now. Was it last semester? Yes, so you have finished with the course, you're not taking it. So you're done with the course. You know absolutely everything. You know how to write CSS3 and how to do animations and layers and what the hell is div and etc, etc. So all this is clear and you will use it like hell now. All right.
And how to center a div.
Yep, how to center a div. The nicest part is this. Can you center this in the middle of the page? In the middle of the viewport? Can you do it? So let's run it. So I have this hello. Let's restart the web. Mm-hmm. And now in the browser, I can just write here hello. No, sorry, test. Name of the page was test, not hello. So we got this. And if I really want to make it a little bit simpler, then I have to do this here. I will explain what it does. You can add it onto your page, then it doesn't use the layout. So now we get this kind of like totally page without anything. So we added this at, and now with the curly braces. So this is called razor code block. It's not the razor expression. So this one doesn't have any kind of output. So toString is not added here. So it's just executed and it's not evaluated, let's say. It's executed, but nothing is created. Or let's say the output is not echoed to the HTML output. And here I just tell to the web engine that, hey, turn the layout to the null, so don't use any kind of layout. So then I get just pure HTML or pure output. And if I go here, take the view page and view page source, it is only this hello, nothing else. So there's no extra added. So can you move this hello to the middle of page? So it will be here.
Not at the moment. Not right now. We should do some divs.
Yep, divs and then some CSS tricks and calculate the viewport size and do all kinds of like tricks with that. How to actually flexbox and whatever else is there. How to actually move it to the middle of the page. So it is definitely doable, but not a trivial task. Okay, but we have our kind of the most important two lines here, the page and what is the view model. So the model for the page here. So now we can actually write some code here. So let's create a property. Let's say string greeting. hello from code. And now we can do here, let's say h2. Now with the sign, we switch over to the razor. And we get nice intelligence, what we can do. So let's start right. M, we already have the model. Model dot. And now we have whatever we have inside the model. So model is actually pretty big, but it knows that the greeting is the only property we declared ourselves. So this is in the beginning and in the bold. So and why the model is so big? Because the test class is derived from the page model, and the page model has like all those other properties and methods. But for us, this model.greeting is important. And basically, toString is added here. So this is pointless. This is kind of like default behavior. And at without doing anything is basically echo or read it out. So we can omit the toString, save it, run it again. And we got this hello from code. And now we can do all kinds of like fancy tricks here. So since the onGet is executed on every GET request, we can grab this greeting and actually, yes, modify it. Add a space, time is, date time, now toString. Once again, toString is not needed, but there it is. So let's rerun it. Yes, on every request, if I don't do those too quickly, then I will hit the new second on every request, and I can see that the time is updated on the string. Okay. So what else can we do here? Let's do a form. Let's actually send data back and forward. Or at least let's try it. Or first thing, let's try this. How do I get the input here into the onGet? So the only thing, since you know that we cannot send, there is no data to be sent in case of GET request because there is no form, so there is no payload. The only thing we can do is we can add here name equals, so we can add parameters here. So how can we receive those parameters in the C# side? String, and I use the name. So let's clue that one here also at the end. Will this work? Yes, it did work. So it's actually quite easy to get those values. Now comes we go back to the HTTP protocol. What will happen now?
We get a string and try to parse it.
It's integer age. So the first thing, so let's rerun it. And I will just go to the test page again. So the first question you always have is this: why is this thing 0? Why is this thing 0?
Int is not nullable.
Yes, so the default value is 0, yes?
Yeah.
Yep, but why is it 0?
We haven't specified.
Exactly, and typically if you don't specify, you forget it, and then you come to me or to the TAs that, why is this thing not working? Where is my kind of like age, blah, blah, blah. And then you haven't actually sent anything. So it cannot get the value out of the thin air. You need it to send it. Okay, so we have now this age. So let's write question mark, age equals 6. And we got 6 here. Even more, let's write here age plus, let's say 10. So it is actually an integer, yeah?
Do we always have to rebuild it, and will it be a problem on the big projects?
In the big projects?
Like if I want to make a small change and I have to
No,
rebuild
you don't want to make a small change. You write and write and write and write, and then after 3 days you press play.
Okay, so there's no automatic thing.
There actually is. There is actually the way how to, not really when you make a code changes, but when you make razor changes, those can be reloaded. And now in the 2 weeks, we will actually week and a half, we will get .NET 6, which will support system-wide hot reloading. But kind of like it hasn't been an issue for me in the real world. I mean, it would be nice and convenient if it's like kind of like happens automatically. Some of the environments do support it, that your changes are kind of like automatically reflected as soon as you save anything. But it's not really working the way as it should work mostly. It's okay when you just do like simple UI changes. As soon as you do anything more complex, then it's how can you actually hot reload? Because I have like database and different queries, and I changed some code there behind it. So you cannot just reload my application from the middle somewhere. So it basically needs to restart every time from the scratch. So finally, kind of like, for me personally, kind of the hot reload is kind of like pointless almost, because I'm working on the business logic, and you cannot reload business logic. You can reload like hot reload like UI changes like easily, but it will be there. So let's refresh it. Yes, it is plus 10, so it is actually integer. So the next question is this: age equals 6. Now I did write a string there, and I got then. Why?
Now with age 0.
Yeah, because the string 6 is not, you cannot parse it into the value. So we get the default value instead of it. .5 also doesn't work. So the important takeaway from here is this line here. It gets sent to the, one moment. Jaa, ma õpetan, aga räägi lühidalt. Helistame sulle õhtul tagasi, on see okei? Davai, pärast mingit 6 paika kuskil. Davai, tšau. So what you need to kind of like always think is this, that this line here, this will be just sent as a string to the server, and the string or the server now needs to get this string from here. So this will be where is our HTML in the beginning. So this one will be here. This string will be whatever is here in the address bar here will be sent here. So the server needs to take this string, so everything is string, and then start to parse it from the string. So if you make some kind of mistakes, if your number format is not correct or etc., then no can do. Then if you really want to see that is the age really there or is it not there, is there actually value for the age? So was there a query string parameter for the age? You can add this. So if you make it nullable, then you can actually understand what is there. So was it actually there or was it not there? Then we can do something like this. Let's say age equals to null. Then let's give, I don't know, let's say -5. And otherwise, age plus 10. So we got -5 because this 0.5 you cannot convert it to the integer. If it's 0, yep, now it was 0. So 0 plus 10 is 10. 1, 11. If we omit it, -5. If we omit it at all, -5. So we can try to do some kind of form here and see how we can deal with the form data in some shape and form. So let's try. So I will just delete everything from here. So let's start from the scratch. And since I deleted the greeting property, now this is a compilation error here. This is nice, actually. So the weakly typed HTML that only gets resolved during the runtime is like killing me softly. Flashbacks into different programs. So, how to write a form? Everybody knows? Form. So if there is no action, if the action goes to the, I don't want to send the data to the different HTML URL, then I don't need action to specify the action here. And the only thing I probably need to specify this method, and is it a post or is it a get? So let's start with the get. I think it's small letters. And input. So there was the name. Let's call it the name. And then we have the button. No, not button.
Input type button.
Input type submit. So this is the kind of like the, let's say, the simplest form. And maybe we can make it a little bit nicer, which is the label for. Actually, I don't need. Okay, I need. So this needs now the ID. And then this is the for name. And since the method is get, when I click the button, it reloaded the page via the get, and just those form fields were converted into the query string parameters. Since it's a name, now I can do something with the name. Now I have this name. Now I can do here, let's say, prop string name. Let's say this can be a nullable, and I can just save it here. Let's make it a little bit better. Now some razor syntax for it. You can try it, write at, and then just if. And now we are inside the C#. So basically when you start with at, you're always in the C#. So we can try something like this. Model.name, this is the string we have. If this one is not null, then let's write it out. And we can do even the else here. So let's load the page. No name yet. Yep, it was null, or is initially null. And when I input the value, I got the test. Also, would be nice if this thing is not made empty. So input, and there is this value attribute. Model.name. Let's put this one back here. Yep. Now the value is not removed. Kind of the simplest form based on the get. So this website, of course, looks now pretty ugly. So let's remove this layout null and let's see what we get then. Okay, you actually have already seen what you got, but it will be a little bit nicer. So now we get this header and footer and looks a little bit nicer. The fonts are kind of like not the basic default ones anymore, and text size was changed, and everything looks a little bit better. So now we have like a bunch of questions, like where is this thing coming from? How did we now get kind of like this? What is going on here? So the technical background, what is going on here? How is the CRUD page chosen? Headers, footers, pictures, CSS, all this kind of thing. So everything actually, what is running here is a console application. So the Razor or the ASP.NET web application is a console application. If you look into the code, you can see there is still this program CS, and if you open it up, there is still this public static void main. So you can totally write your console thing here if you want to, console system.console.writeline whatever. So you can run your basically your Battleships game from here. And then at the end, what it does is this create host builder. So it basically configures some kind of web server and finally runs it. So what the system is doing actually is this, that we have a built-in web server, which is called the Kestrel, is the project name. This web server that we have here is meant only to run your application. So it's single application web server. You cannot have, okay, you can have, but you have to write it on your own. Like if you want to support multiple websites internally, so then you can write whatever you need to. But basically, out of the box, what it does, it takes over one IP address with one port. So if you really want to host it directly, you definitely can. Not recommended, but you can. It works extremely fast. This is probably the most fastest web server there is almost. And we get it inside our code. So it's somewhere there inside the DLL in some kind of libraries and runs. It's recommended not to expose it directly to the web. Okay, you can, but typically we have a proxy in front of it, in front of our Kestrel web server, because we are running out of the IP addresses and ports. So typically, when you have your port 80, you want to run several web servers on the same port. So either you program it yourself inside this one web application, how to run multiple web servers, or you will start multiple instances of Kestrel using different port numbers, and then you make a proxy in the port 80 that will direct the traffic to the correct internal stuff. So we will look into it at depth in the next semester, but that basically what's important for us is that there is this built-in web server that is started here from the command line application. So there's only one line here. So configure this web server, build it, and finally run it. So then it starts up and waits for the commands. And then we have this kind of application structure here. So the next, maybe most important thing is the startup file. And you can see from the program CS that it references this web builder UseStartup. So this create host builder references the startup file. So for us, what is important here is this startup file describes to the Kestrel what kind of configuration we want to use. Most of here is working out of the conventions, so we don't need to do anything here much, and we don't go into details into the configuration. So typically, it's just this is enough. Services add Razor pages, so this adds the support for the Razor pages, and no additional configuration is needed for the Razor pages. So it just works now. Definitely, it can be configured to the hell if you want to. So you can play around here a lot and change all kinds of bolts and nuts and corners, but typically we don't need to. And here is two parts for this system. So first one is this one here, configure services. This basically configures our dependency injection. We will speak about it, what it is. But this one kind of doesn't run yet anything. This just tells the system that, hey, when you actually want to use Razor pages, I know how to do it. But doesn't run yet anything, or anybody can ask for the Razor pages, and then you get this kind of service out of it. The actual configuration for the web server is this method, public void configure. And those lines here. So this tells to the web server or the application, what is our web request pipeline. So it adds a bunch of modules into the web server that first, when the request comes in, do this. Then when you're happy, then do the next step, then do the next step, then do the next step. And all those different steps are here described, what those steps are. And the steps are added into the pipeline in the order they are described here. So if you swap the lines around here, something weird will probably happen, or something will stop working. So don't play around here if you don't need to. And maybe what is important for us is this one here, that our static files, for example, is before the authorization happens. So this module here, the UseStaticFiles, tells the system that, hey, we actually do not only support the code, but we also actually support static files. All the configuration is there out of the box. We typically don't change anything. So the static files describe all the folders and what are the images and etc. etc. But what it does inside the pipeline is this. Let me draw you a simple picture. So this is the text. So this was the request. And this is the response, which was also text. So this is how our web server looks like. So those are those pipeline modules. And let's say this one is a static files. So when the request comes in, it first goes to static files modules. When static files module sees that, hey, I know what to do with this request, it can do immediately this. Shortcut the pipeline and say, hey, the response is here, take it, go back, take your image, done. So the rest of the pipeline even doesn't see the request because there's no need, it's already served. If the static files module thinks that, okay, I don't know what to do with that one, then it sends it forward to the next one, and then to the next one, then to the next one. And then the final one is this UseEndpoints. So this is basically the Razor Pages module that tells that, hey, if nothing else works, if everything is done, then the last final step, okay, now I need to figure out what to do with this request. So either I need to return some kind of 404 not found, or maybe I can figure out the way how to produce some kind of HTML out of something. So the first thing, what is interesting for us is this static files. So this is somewhere in the beginning. So the static file automatically supports this folder here, www.root. So this is our static web content. So all the JavaScript, CSS, whatever JavaScript libraries, favorites icon, all this stuff is here. So if you want to upload some kind of text here, I mean files, pictures, whatever, so everything goes here into this www.root. And the last one, the final frontier, is this UseEndpoints. So this adds the support for the Razor. And the Razor uses this folder, pages. So whatever is here in the pages, the endpoints, UseEndpoints tries to solve it and figure out what to do with your request. And without any kind of like, we also have this routing and whatever else here, so everything works based on the kind of like standard configuration. You don't want to trick it and do weird stuff. And what the standard configuration is this. When the request comes in from the web, no, that's the wrong one, that one. If nothing is there, if the request is with the base address, without specifying any kind of like parameters or additional URL stuff, then it doesn't know what to serve, doesn't find anything, and then please, if there's nothing there, go to the index page. So then this page is used. If there is something there, if there is some kind of URL written here, and this page is not found, so it cannot find a file with this name, .cshtml, if it cannot find this file on the file system, then we get 404, HTTP error 404 back. So not found. So either it's a default value, or so if there is nothing, then the fallback is an index, and if there is something, then it tries to find it, and it might fail if it's not there. Then how the view engine works, or what is going on here. How do we get this kind of like, why do we get this kind of like nice page here? And the view engine starts with this view start. Actually, it starts with the view imports. So this is the first 3 lines on every Razor page we do. So this is always there. So those are kind of like the standard imports. Let them be there. The next thing, what is always there, is this view start. And the view start tells to the view engine that, hey, the layout parameter always has the default value, which is _layout. And then rest of your pages added on top of it. So what is this layout? So layout, let's see, I think I even have a theory about it. Where are my slides? So we have the startup. Okay.
Oh, there is one.
Mhm. Shared layout. Layout for every page. So how the view engine works, or what it does, is that first it sets up those default parameters. So what are the default imports? Then what is the default layout? Although you can change it on every page, you can override it. And then finally, when your page is ready, so everything is copied together, and now it tries to produce the output from it. So how to produce the output from it? And the view engine knows that always, if there is a layout parameter and it has a value, it's not a null, then it tries to find this layout. And if it cannot find the layout from the same directory where the index file is, or the file is that you're trying to produce, then it goes to the shared folder. And here we have this _layout. That is the default fallback for every page. And here you have your standard kind of HTML5 nice page. So if you look through it, you can see that uses Bootstrap, some kind of CSS is there, and then we have all those like navigation bar, page itself, footer, and the main point is this one here. We have one C# command on the template, which is this or on the layout, which is this @render body. So this tells basically how the system works, that if you get a Razor page, and the Razor page has a layout, then insert the Razor page into here where this @render body is called out. So this is why our page is in the middle of this kind of like page in the center. So we get all the kind of like nice HTML headers, titles, page header. So inside the body we have the page header, then the actual content, and then the footer, and then the inclusion of the JavaScript scripts at the end of the stuff. So this is how the system works. And here in the Razor pages, the URL path, how the pages are resolved into the correct file location is purely based on the URL syntax. So what your URL is looking like, /index, /contact, something. You can also make subfolders. So if you make a subfolder, let's say store, then you can have index file inside the store, or some other pages there. Then it is /store/ whatever is inside there. If there is, if nothing is specified, just a catalog name, then it tries to find the index automatically. So the index is the default page. So the whole routing happens based on the URL and the file names. Everything has to match there. And this is what your minimal layout would look like let's say correct layout, somewhat. So there is this HTML header, all the necessary tags, body, and HTML close tag. And this is the kind of like the minimal render body. So then you have like some kind of normal HTML. And then, of course, our default layout has many kind of like nice features. All those bootstraps and validation, some kind of, and whatever else, JavaScript and CSS custom and etc. So now we can actually start to use this system and dig around what can we do. So we know how to create the simple HTML. We know how the view engine works. In simplest level, you have already seen some examples how to write this Razor kind of stuff. And now we need to kind of like glue it all together and make some better UI out of it. And nicely, what is here out of the box is support for the CRUD applications. So all this, what we do with the databases, typically create, read, update, and delete. This we can get out of the box, not out of the box, but we can generate those Razor pages for this kind of system. So it knows how to look through our database structure, what are the strings, what are the numbers, what are the relationships, what drop-downs to create, and creates all those pages for us. So kind of like this simple kind of starting point, how to create a web application, which actually is a pretty complex web application, works quite well. So let's try to do it. And we already have our kind of like complex system here, since we have this domain. We have our courses, course declaration, grades, whatever else we created. So we can update it a little bit. Let's try to be nice about it. So at least I add those max lengths. So how long can be the course name? Probably not that long. Maybe 64. Course declaration, what is here? No, that's okay. Grade. There's just an integer, that's okay. Okay, here's the homework description. So this one definitely needs a max length. Maybe this one is a longer one. And person has the limit on the first name and last name. Okay. Then we have our DAL application. DBContext is here. On model creating, on configuring. Okay, and this has this database connection fixed here. All right. Let's see how it works. And we have our console application. So now I need to do a new migration because I changed the length of the fields. So two ways how to do it. Either I can destroy everything and start from the scratch. So let's delete the database and delete the migrations and start from the scratch. Or I can do it, let's try to correctly and add a migration. So it updates the existing data and doesn't delete everything, or I will not delete manually everything. Okay, I have lost those commands. Oh, and I don't have the README here. So let's write some helpful things here. Touch, README. No, this is capital. It's a Razor Pages web app. So I need those first those commands. So those are actually on the slides. Let's see, Entity Framework. So this one we already have done. Model, where are those? No, actually I have the copy command here. Okay, add, and now it's not anymore initial create, now it's limit strings. And now we get this warning. An operation was scaffolded that may result in the loss of data. It understands that when you go and change the column length to the smaller than it was, then something might happen with your data. Are you sure that everything is okay? So now we have this limit string modification here. And we can see persons field last name is changed from the nvarchar max to the nvarchar 128. Okay. And now we can update our database. Went okay, no crashes. So hopefully our database is okay. So let's try to use our stuff. So here is an example how to register our DBContext into this service collection. So you can see it when and how we use it and how it's useful. But let's first do it. So services dot add there is no DBContext. Why not? NuGet, exactly. Since we created the application without the user support, users are based on the database. So then we don't get out of the box database here. So we have to install it here manually via the NuGet. So let's add it. Manage NuGet packages. Probably it's something like entity framework. Where's the entity framework core? Entity framework core. So this one. Yes, please install. And now we have this add DBContext. Now it asks for the generic, what's the actual DBContext name? So this is this application DBContext we have here. This one is of course red because we don't reference the Dell project. So yep, reference and use it. And then there is this options thingy. So we don't need the options thingy because our application DBContext actually has everything everything already described here, I think. We can try it. Will it work or do we need to do something with the connection string? Because we have this hard-coded stuff here, which is actually kind of like not recommended. But initially it should work. So now we have this called this, or using this kind of magical or not really understand thing, which is called use this method to add services to the container. What the hell are services and what the hell is a container and why do we use it and what's it useful for? So we go in depth into it next semester, but let's do something with it initially here. So let's use the same test. So what we want to get here is we want to access our database. We want to load data from the database, whatever is there, the persons, and list it in our web page. One way how to do it is this. We will make a property here. Well, let's say let's make it a private probably. Private application DBContext. This is reference. This will totally work. And this is what you will typically do. Like first approach is this initially. What's the problem? What's the issues here?
It's local.
It's local. And not even that it's local. Local is maybe okay, but it's defined locally here inside the test. So this class now, the test, is dependent of this application DBContext. And I cannot change it out. It's fixed here. How can I test it, for example? During testing, I want to use not the real database, and not even, most definitely, I don't want to use the production database. I want to use some kind of in-memory, some kind of simple database in memory to test out that my business logic is working okay. So if you write it's called dependencies. If you write your dependencies like this is now hard-coded or hard dependency. And if you want to update it, if you want to change anything, you have to go and change it everywhere manually. And it's really, really, really hard to test. So that's where this dependency injection container or those services come to play. From here, we actually now have this kind of thing which is called dependency injection container, which keeps track of stuff our application knows of and knows how to serve it to us. So when we ask from this dependency injection container that, hey, please give me the database, it will give us the database. So there is only kind of like one central place where the configuration for the database is kept. And it's really, really easy to swap it out and use some other kind of database engine if you want to. So how do we ask for the database here? So or how do we ask from the dependencies injection container that, hey, please give me something? And I can ask it from the constructor. So this private, typically read-only. Name, I don't want to. I want that CTX. And now we get kind of the magic part behind the scenes. When this class is created, when the object is created out from this class, so when this Razor page is about to load, then when you do it manually, you have to provide this parameter into the constructor. When the system is doing it, system can kind of like look ahead. It's called reflection. Via the reflection, it can dig out what are the parameters for the constructor. So you can see that, hey, this application context is a parameter for the constructor. And then it goes to the dependency injection engine to this container and ask from the registry, hey, dependency injection engine, do you know what the hell is application DBContext? And if you know, then please give it to me. Since this is now registered there, then the instance is provided, and we can create, or the system can create this object test and supply the correct constructor argument. But now we can easily write some kind of tests separate from the main application. We can do, just as a demo, something like this. Party equals new test, new some other DB. We can do something like this. So basically write some kind of manual test where we manually initialize the test controller and provide the parameter with some kind of different database connection. If it's correct type, if it is of this type, application DBContext, then it will just work. So now the dependency is removed from this class. So it's outside dependency. It's exposed and can be changed from the outside. And now here on onGet, we can work with our database. We can do something like this. Let's say prop, what we have list, was it person? Person in domain. Let's call it the persons. And now we can do something like this. Persons equals context dot persons to list. This will give us the list of persons. And now we can use it here. Let's do, I don't know, let's do a table. And we want to repeat our data. So let me zoom in here. So there is this for each. So basically whatever we have in C#, we have the same thing in the Razor almost. So there are some special things like this add page, but any normal C# code block we can execute. So for each item, or it was also person, in model.persons. And we want to repeat those rows. So this was the person dot what we have first name, and person dot last name. We can also add a header. And we can actually do it more correctly. It's the head. And this one is the body, if I remember correctly. And this one is DH, I think, is the tag. Yep, should be table header. So let's see. Will this thing work? So what's the problem here? Public test. What's wrong with you? Person says get nullable. So this has to have some kind of, either it must be a nullable thing like this, or then we can say that no, we know that it always will have a value, so let's call it a default with the exclamation point. And I got this. So there was one record actually happily in the database. So there was at least some kind of data there. It wasn't empty. Actually, it looks pretty good already. I mean, visually it's kind of like okay. To do it manually out from the scratch is not actually that simple thing. So this will be your kind of semi-mandatory home reading is go here. Bootstrap. It's actually get Bootstrap. Documentation, switch to the 4.6 branch and read it through. This is one of the most widely used web design frameworks. So in your professional career, you actually need to know how to use it or what are the principles here. And probably the one thing you need to read most is this layout. So what is the layout system here? What are all those different containers doing? And then probably the next one is components. That is useful to read. So how to do all kinds of like forms and alerts and stuff like that. So all the ASP.NET is full of it. Or whatever web application you're doing, it's everywhere. But we will cover it. I will also cover some of it. But since you're done your HTML course, then you should be like fluent in it. You just read it through and CSS and some HTML and clear. So basically Bootstrap is just a bunch of CSS. There's like nothing else there. So it's a little bit JavaScript helpers to do something automatically, but mainly it's just a bunch of CSS. So you get all kinds of this kind of functionality. Where is our page? This one. Let's go here, inspect. Let's put it to the side. And let's switch here. And let's do it as a responsive. So you can see how the web page jumps around, depending how much size does it have, or how much room that does it have. So depending on the width, either we have the menu or the menu is this whatever hamburger. And how the page is kind of like swept around. Okay. So this thing like works nicely. But now if I want to really do something here with this persons table, let's say, I have to do everything manually. So how do I add a record into the persons table? How do I delete the record from there? How do I list? Okay, the list I already did. So I can list all the persons. But whatever else, all those create, read, update, and delete operations, we have a help. We don't need to create everything manually. And let's see what is here, bind property. Okay, but we can try first things manually to understand how this thing is working, and especially how the post is working. So we want to edit, let's say we want to edit one single person here. We want to modify the record we have in the database. Okay, I have one. So let's add a new page here. Let's call it an add person. Or maybe edit person would be better. And let's start from the empty page. Can I rename it? I want to call it an edit person. And this one is an edit person. Okay, how should the edit person look like? So what's the first thing I need to do? What's the first question here?
Person's name.
Yep, and the first question is how can I get the person's name? So what person am I editing? So how can I get the info here? What person am I editing? ID. How can I get the ID?
From the URL.
From the URL. All right, cool. So let's say it's we did an integer-based primary keys, yes? So it's an int ID. Now I need to go to the database and ask from the database that, hey, please give me this person. Okay, so let's say we did it here in the test. So let's grab the logic from here. So I need a reference to the database. It's just the edit person. Then I need this person here. Or maybe it's not the default. I cannot guarantee that it is always there. So maybe let's make this one nullable. So now I can go to the database and ask from the database persons dot and probably I can do the find because find works based on the IDs. And maybe I also should make this one nullable. So if ID equals null, then what? No, return. Get out from here. Or let's say or ID equals 0. Merge into pattern. Okay, this will find me a person. And since it's edit, now I need to create an edit form for the person, what I'm editing. Since I know how to do a pull development. So let's close the rest of the unnecessary tabs. So I can go here and let's say components, forms. And I can copy the form example from here. So nice, clean form. So we have what? First name, last name. We don't have any kind of check. Submit is okay. So now the method is post. So input type is probably a text. ID is, let's say, first name. Described by no idea. I don't want to have the help here. So the label is for the first name, this one is for the last name. Type is definitely text. And now I can write something like this: value equals what it is, model dot person dot first name. And since this can be null, I have to tell it to the forget it, I have a value. And this one is the last name. And probably here will be wise to actually, since I need the ID, so let's write out, or no, let's put it here at the end. I want to do this edit, or let's say, let's call it an action. So I can go and edit this person. So how can I go and edit this person? So this was the, what, age? href. What did I add as an EditPerson? Yeah? Person ID. So this is the link to this page, EditPerson. Construct correct URL with this ID, and hopefully it comes here. Yep, ID. If it's null, then don't do anything, and if it's there, then try to load the first one. Okay, or the, not the first one, but the one with the correct primary key. Let's hope for the best. Let's see. Yep. Edit goes to the EditPerson ID 6. Yep. Got it. Web development, it's a simple thing, you know. It's easy initially. Then it gets more complex. Then finally it's an easy again, but then the business logic is complex. Then you start to integrate God knows what, and then it's really, really complex. So now we have several things here. What the hell is this here? Why do I need to write this first name so many times? I'm not even submitting anything yet. I haven't clicked the submit yet, so I don't have any onPost method there in the code behind, so I don't save anything back in the database. But even this one here already looks like, hey, cannot this thing be simplified? Why do I write this first name here, then this first name here, and then this first name here? So it's kind of like, can't we automate it? Of course we can. Then even more, why is this type here, like type text? I know that it's model person first name, that it's a string, so it should be type text kind of like automatically. Why the hell do I need to specify it here? So cannot it pick it out automatically? If it's a number, then make some kind of like the arrows up and down, and if it's a string, then make this like input, and if it's password, then do something else. So why this kind of like complex system? So the first thing what we have here are called, and we will go over those in the next lecture somewhere, are tag helpers called. And if you write here ASP, then you can see all the tag helpers that this specific tag supports. So the input tag in the HTML, what kind of help can Razor provide to us? And the most important for us is this ASP4. What is this field speaking about? and we speak about person.firstname. And since this is nullable, I need this exclamation point here. So now I think I don't need the type text. I don't need the ID. And I don't even need the value. Should take the value from the existing person. And the same thing here, the label. It has also the ASP4. So it's for the person dot first name. Okay, this looks a little bit better. Let's run it and see, does it actually work as I kind of predict that it works. So let's reload the page. Yep, nothing changed on the page. Everything is exactly the same. So, but let's look at the page source. What's the HTML we have now? So this, the second one is our manual thingy we did. So everything is what we did manually there. And now here we have this generated one. So for, we got this person underscore first name. We got back our type text from the data type. Then we have some data validation thingies here. I can see plenty of those. Even the data val max length seems to be here. ID correctly. Max length, name, and value. So everything is deducted or deduced from this ASP-4. So it knows that this field and this field or this property has those kind of options like max length and data type is string and etc. and current value is this, and so everything is generated correctly for us. How much time do we have? Like 15 minutes or something? I think 20 minutes. All right. Okay. So now we want to actually edit the data and submit it back. So now we need to work with this post side of the stuff. And to work with the post side, in the case of post, we don't get those URL parameters. So we don't have the query strings. So we have some other ways how to read the data. And to read the data that is submitted to us in the post, we have this bind property. So when we add this attribute on top of our person, now Razor knows that when the post happens, then please try to construct the person from the post parameters. This means that, let's write here the post also. So this is the public void on post. And we can try to do something like this. Let's say system.console right line, and we can try to write out the person we have. And I think we made a kind of the nice, yep, there's two strings there. And here we have the post. So let's run it and let's see, what do we have? And what do we miss? The important part is, what do we miss? So let's load the data. Submit it. Nothing happened, although last name was gone. We don't have the last name anymore. So if I load the data via the get, I have the first name, last name. When I click submit, the last name is removed. So what the hell is going on? Why? And you can see here, what's the actual printout when the post happened. So here, when we do the on post, we write out the person. So the first thing is this, ID is a 0. Okay, we have the first name, Andres, but we don't have the last name. And this was also visible in the get, or when the page was rendered out again. So not on the get, but when the page was rendered out from the on post. So why? Why do we have the first name but we don't have the last name?
Different ID in the inputs for last name.
Yes, not just the ID but the field name and etc. etc. So we didn't create the form correctly. So the form, whatever is there, is not matching with how the Razor or the ASP.NET tries to create this person object back. In case of the get, it works fine, because when we do get the request, we go and load the data from the database. Then we have the full person with everything. In the post, here we don't do anything with the database. So this method is not executed. So the on post is executed, and we write out person as it is. So this means that the person was constructed by the ASP.NET itself, by the web framework. So at least it's not a null, so it did something, but the data is missing. So this means that we need to add the data correctly here. So the first thing is this ASP4. So let's fix the last name thing. So this will be for the last name. And this one is also for the last name. Okay, this will fix the first name and last name. Do we need the ID? Can I update the data in the database without the ID? No, so I need the ID. I need to get the ID value back from the post. Can I get it back somehow magically? Out of the thin air? Probably not. No magic. That's my favorite phrase always in the programming. There is no magic.
Hidden input and also add their ASP4.
Yes, I need the hidden input, exactly, because the data has to be there. So this is kind of like the same lesson with the HTTP forms and how the HTTP works and text data here and there. So the data has to be there. You cannot kind of like get it out of the thin air. So inside the form, in the beginning, so let's add the input. Type is hidden, and ASP4 is the person ID. All right. So this means that now I should be able to do here something like this. ctx.persons.update. Give it to person. I know that it's there. And then delta the ctx dot what it is, save changes, yeah? So let's run it again. So let's load it. Submit it. Okay. Value stayed put. Nothing crashed. Like good sign. And now we can try to go to our test page and read the data from the database. And yes, actually data was updated successfully. So we did construct back the correct person object to use against the database. So this is one place where you typically tend to make mistakes, that you don't send necessary data from the web to the backend, and then you're kind of like amazed at what the hell is going on, why this thing is not working, or why this is sent wrong, and why is this not encoded correctly, etc., etc. So you always have to keep in mind garbage in, garbage out, or like no data in, no data out. Okay, and now let's move to the promised land. That what the hell, why the hell do we do it all manually? And we have this razor pages scaffolding. So this will help us to create the same way as we did create the migrations for the database. This will help us to create all those CRUD pages automatically. You don't have to go and do them manually one by one with all those create, read, update, list all the records, etc. methods as a starting point. Those pages are only good as a starting point. You cannot like do a real application that way. But you can see or get like initial pages, see how it works, and then start to modify those. So first you need this .NET tool install global.NET ASP.NET code generator. Or the other way, you maybe need to update it if you already have it installed. So I can try with an update. Maybe there is a newer version. No, it was reinstalled, so it didn't update anything, already had it. So now I have it. And now this command, .NET ASP.NET code generator razor page, and then some bunch of parameters. Them will tell us what is the model class. So person, for example. We even have the person class. Then DC, data context. What's the data context? UDL, use default layout. Outtier, where should it go? And reference script libraries. And there are some other parameters. Maybe -f is also useful, like overwrite, like force. So if the page is already there, then just write it over. So let's grab this command and let's try to run it. So where is my README? And let's make a command out of it. And just for fun, F also. So what kind of models do I have? Yes, I have a person. This one is called application DBContext. So let's use application DBContext. And plus cd into web app directory first. So it has to run from inside the web application itself. Okay. Let's see what happens. Probably I need to install some additional NuGet packages, but let's see the errors. Yep. Microsoft Visual Studio, blah, blah, design. This one got installed. Let's try again. Microsoft Entity Framework Core Design. Okay. And now it went okay. And as I can see, create, edit, details, delete, index pages were created, so the full CRUD. So let's see what is here. Pages. Yep, we got the persons folder. And inside the persons folder, we got a bunch of red lines. Since the nullables, the code generator is not updated for the nullables. So let's fix those problems. What does it? Non-nullable property person is uninitialized. So we can try the simplest thing first, default, and this is it. So it's not null. And probably the same problem is everywhere. So I can just add the default everywhere. Okay, so that was the only issue. So let's run it and see what did we get. So this was persons, I think, like this. Is this nice or what? Create new.
How does the scaffolding handle foreign key relationships?
Let's see. Edit. Can I edit? Save. Yes. Can I look details? Yes. Can I delete? Yes. So we got the full CRUD. So this was kind of like the simple entity. Everything went kind of like easy here. So, but we have all those foreign key relationships, yeah? We have like plenty of other entities also. So let's do those. Where is my README? So we have, let's start from the beginning. So it's the course declaration, grade, homework. And person is actually already done, but this should be lost in the list like this. Pages, so this is courses. So this is the course declarations. This is the grades.
Homework is misspelled. The W isn't capitalized.
Yeah. Homework like this. And homeworks. And person was already done. Okay, let's run those. Now I have a problem. If I take the next one and try to run it, it will fail because it cannot build the project anymore because of those nullable reference problems. Yep, non-nullable, blah, blah, blah. So either I can go and fix those errors all the time after every scaffolding, or then I can do something like this maybe, and temporarily comment those out, warnings as errors. So code, where it is, comment with line comment, for example. And let's run it again. Okay, I got the course declarations. Now I need this grade. And the final one, homework. So I got all the pages, and since I'm now lazy and I don't want to write here manually every time that go to this person's page, I want to have those here in those links here, so I can open up the template. So from the shared layout, find out the place where this home and privacy is referenced, and let's make a copy of the privacy one. So ASP area, ASP page. Okay, page seems to be at the correct place. So it's the person's index. Or actually, I don't need to write the index here. I can write it just like this, I think. So it was the persons, then it was the courses, then it is what, course declarations. And then it's the home works, and finally it's the grades. Okay, privacy is the last one, and I don't know, do I need the index here at the end or not? Let's see. And now let's run it. I have a bunch of warnings, but it turned the errors off. So let's see, persons. No, that one doesn't work. So do I need the slash at the end? What? Where is it going? Do I still need to put the index also? Okay, maybe. Yep, now it works. Okay, we have the persons, courses. Let's create a new one. C#. Course declaration. Create new. You can see your answer. Yep, student. There is no final grade. Person ID Johan. Course ID C#. There's only one. Okay, final grade must be there. Okay, it's a 0 initially. Okay, maybe it's a -1. Let's add a new person. Let's add a new course. Course declarations. Let's create new. And Pep is taking the Java. Okay. Homeworks. Let's create new one. Do homework 1 in C#. Yep. And grades. Grade value. I know somebody got the 5. Do homework 1, yes. Course declaration. Okay, that's not kind of Not the best drop-down anymore.
Maybe you can override these.
You can definitely override those a lot. And it's actually not so simpler anymore. Or not so simple. It actually should be a two-step operation here, because if you choose the course declaration first, and only then you should show the list of homeworks. Because otherwise, the homework was in the C#, but I'm choosing the Java from here.
And does that have to be done in C# or can that be done on the database side?
This has to be done on the client side actually. Or then you have to do like two separate requests.
We can't trust clients.
You cannot trust clients, exactly. So you need to verify it finally on the backend side. When the final submit comes that, hey, please add grade for this homework in this subject, then or this declaration to whom this grade goes, then you actually have to verify that, hey, is everything okay? Can this data actually be inserted into the stuff? Plus, if you do it on the database side, then if it doesn't work, if it's wrong somehow, then you get an exception from the database. So this means that you have to handle the exceptions in the code. But I can try to create, yes. Okay, this is not the best one to list here, but basically it does work. So now I can validate my full data model. So can I do whatever I need to do? But this is only just a starting point. You cannot use it. Okay, you can use it, but this is kind of like PHP myadmin or any kind of like database administrator tool, basically, tailored specifically to this database here. But this is just a crude simple web interface. It's not really any kind of like useful application. But it's pretty powerful what it does. So this is what it looks like. So now we can dig around a little bit how those CRUD operations look like. What do they do? So let's start from the index. So person's index. So now the code looks a little bit different. So now we are in this async pattern. But basically they do here the same thing that we did manually first. So we have this dependency injection for the database engine called context finally, and then we go to the context persons, grab the whole data set, convert it to the list, assign it to this person property here, and then what's happening here? Okay, they also have some kind of title system seems to be here. Then the create new link, then some fancy way how to write out the field names. So even those can be generated. You don't have to write manually first name, last name. And then the same for each. They start to iterate over the list, write out the value, not manual, but use some kind of helper function, HTML display for. We will speak about it in the next lecture. And do the same actions, links. We did just edit, they also have like edit and details and delete and whatever else here. Okay, and maybe the next more interesting one is the edit. So the same database. Person is a bind property. On get the same idea with an ID. And they try to find it. Okay, now they have the different return type. They return something which is called an action result, not a void anymore. So now they can return this not found. So they can generate the 404 code that, hey, the person is not there in the database. Go to hell. What do you want? Yep. Then they dig out the person from the database, first on default. Basically the same idea. If the person is null, not found, then once again go to hell. And finally, return page, basically the same thing as return void, and then the local page is rendered out. And on the post side, nothing is done with the database. Here, first step seems to be this, model state is valid. So this is built-in functionality which validates this object here, the person, and the rules for the validation are taken from the object itself. So if there is this max length limit, and the string is actually longer than 128 characters, then this function will return false. So it tries to validate all those attributes. We don't have just any here, but it tries to validate all those attributes that is the data according to the attributes here. And there's actually like many different validation things we can add here. But if it is valid, then it does some weird stuff with the entity framework, context attach person state, but it is basically the same update, just a different way how to write it. And then tries to save it to the database, but does it in the try catch block. So if it fails for whatever reason, then it basically tries to load the person again. If it's not found, then it's not found. Then it's 404 if it's not there in the database. And if it is there, then it's true. So basically what they try to do here is they try to check that maybe somebody deleted the data while we were editing it. So when you load the page, now you modify the data and click save after 2 days, then maybe meanwhile somebody was already like killed the data record. So what should happen then? So there's like actually like many different strategies what to do when this kind of thing happens. And the person exists is just a function here, so it tries to check that, hey, is this thing actually there in the database by the ID? So is the ID there? So basically to do the same thing that we did, or that I showed to you, just like maybe a little bit more complex way, or more complete way, let's say. And if we look at the HTML, same thing. ID is a hidden field here, and ASP4 person first name, last name, and plus validation mistakes are shown here immediately. So we did see that this ASP4 added those validation properties into the HTML. And if you look at the end at the page here, they actually include some kind of JavaScript thingy here. So they include this validation scripts partial. And if I go into it, this is the jQuery, some kind of thingies. And what they actually do is this. It's a really complex thing to show because we have pretty long strings. But if I do this, oh no, not long enough. It doesn't even allow it to write it me longer because there's a max length limit, so it just stops there. So I can do this probably. Let's say this. This is, by the way, very costly mistake. The min length 2. We have had this issue here in school, heavily. Before the Taltech took over the IT college, before the IT college was a separate entity, we had our own OEs, not our own, but this was from the HITSA, so it's used widely in other universities still, and it was programmed here. And initially we did write into the person's table, the student's table, that the first name and the last name have the minimum length of 2 characters at least, kind of like obvious, yeah. And then we got the student with the single letter first name. Single letter. Yeah. Japanese or Chinese or something like that. You something.
By the way, we're 10 minutes over time.
Capture ends in 4 minutes 46 seconds. Then we switch to the.
Take a hint of this.
No hints.
We started a bit late.
Yeah.
So now I got this. Okay, that I had already immediately, but if I do this now, just 1 letter, I got this. 2 letters, okay. 1 letter, not okay. And I even didn't click submit.
Yeah.
So this was purely done on the browser side, so this is JavaScript. If you turn off the JavaScript and try to submit it, then it's done again on the server side, because then Entity Framework will start to validate everything. And actually ASP.NET starts to validate, and then finally Entity Framework will also validate, and then finally database will validate. So, but we will speak about it at length somewhere over this semester and next one. some of the stuff can be validated, some of the stuff cannot be validated. For example, this min length cannot be validated by the database because there is no such thing in the SQL as a min length. There is max length. So this is it for today. So you don't have any homework yet from this one? Oh, actually, you should have. No. I will write it down. Your homework will be that you need to support the data saving into the database from your console application. And then the next homework will come after some more digging around in the Razor. So, but this is it for today. See you in the next lecture in 2 minutes and 50 seconds.
Will you be uploading this demo code?
Do you need it? Is it useful for something? Something? Yes, okay. I didn't write anything that much here. It's mostly scaffolding.
Just to see what it should look like.
Yeah, all right. I will make a project out of it and upload it. First, I need to go to the toilet. Ask them.
Yeah.
I can ask you.
I mean, we do have some, but it's nothing really. There may be the
Või midagi. Mul on nagu küsimus. Kui nagu näiteks kõik need nagu examples, nagu selline, et nagu me teeme see database model, mis nagu töötame nagu näiteks klassi. Aga näiteks meie ülesandes meil on nagu oma projekti klassi, ja siis nagu me peame teha siis database model, ja siis kuidas me nagu need wrap'id
sa võid teha teoosli, aga üldiselt kõige lihtsam kasutada neid database modeleid.
24 hours.
Otse
you get an assignment and you need to build it.
Aga kui mul näiteks mul on asjad juba nagu selles mõttes, nagu mul on nagu minu work class, nagu see work chain class, nagu shift class, nagu juba kirjutatud ja nagu kui ma pean nagu nendest mingi moodul, siis ma pean nagu kõik üle kirjutada.
Sa võid teha
ja, et nagu mingi veber on vaja mingi pärast moodul.
Sa võid teha ülegi, aga ise veel just teha, aga nii on võimalik.
Ma nagu ka lugesin see Entity Framework nagu see documentation mingi 2 tundi, nagu ma ei leidnud midagi sellest, aga nagu mõtlesin, kuidas ma seda teen.
Ehk siis kui sa küsid andmed välja andmebaasist, siis sa mappid ümber.
Ja nagu oma objekti siis.
Jah, täpselt.
Ja siis kui oma objektis tahan siis ka nagu siis minu objekt, siis teema see database modeli siis selles
Yeah, it's in Teams and also in Echo.
You can find the code on the
actually all the information is on the specialized page.
list of lists ikka.
Andmebaasi, JSONisse sa ei saa panna kahedimensioonilist.
Ja nii, et siis tuleb list of lists.
Checkad array ja sellest kindlasti räägime. Kui me hakkame nagu päris state'ikaks olestama, aga see on kõige nagu siiamaani kõige